Going live. You're live.
Hey y'all, I am James Wright and welcome to my shop. Tonight we're going to be having a lot of fun. In the live video this last weekend we made this router plane. This one is designed to stick out the end and make it much easier to do tenons. So I made it a little longer. But we've got this big wide flat area over here and everyone's like, oh, you got to carve that. And I'm like, well, I don't have enough time. So today we're going to do a lot of the little detail work on this, finish it up, and I figured it'd be a good chance to actually talk through carving. Now I've done a lot of live videos and talk-throughs on carving, but none of them really kind of go into the philosophy of carving. Yeah, I know there's philosophies about just about everything, but that's what we're going to kind of cover tonight and do a simple carving on this. So I'm going to show you some things. Melody, can you show this spot on here? I have a bunch of carving patterns on here, and I want to show them now so you guys can talk through what you want to see on this. Now, what we have, see what I got here, is several different patterns. Number one, we could do something like this with the Celtic weave. Yes, I'm doing something Celtic. So we've got the curving weave. We have the sharp corners weave. And then we've got these patterns here. So we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we could just do weaving on here, as well as the Trinity, this other weird 3-point thing I found, and then other simple pattern weaves. Or we could do something very different. But I want to show those now so that the chat could actually talk through and see what they want. And we're going to have a little bit of fun. I don't know what we're going to carve in this. Maybe we'll do something freehand. Maybe I could do it rows or something a little bit more three-dimensional, and we'll have a bit of fun with that. So my family just got back from a trip, so thank you for everyone for bearing with us while we were not answering as many comments and things. But we had a good time. We actually went out to Las Vegas and Utah, and we were able to hang out with Alan, who, I don't know if he's on the chat
He
tonight. Just
hopped on.
He is. Hey, Alan. So yeah, he actually, he gave Sarah a few tools. So Sarah's bench now is mostly clear and starting to get her own tools piled on it. So it should be kind of fun. Got a little bit more until the chair is
Carve
all
Sarah's
done.
face.
I do not yet have that skill.
Oh, Alan, you're funny.
I can do a Sarah stick figure.
I can draw it for you.
Yeah, other things. Oh, yes. For those of you wanting to know the plane parts, we got the first batch in, and we're doing some of the detail work and all of the computer work. So I'm hoping a week from this Thursday they will go live. We'll have a few things coming out on them, and I'm really looking forward to that. So we will have the adjuster knob, we'll have 2 different types of yokes, and we'll have the 2 different wedges, the 50 degree and the 55 degree. So really looking forward to that. Been taking pictures of all those, and they're kind of cool. So,
well,
yes.
Logan, are you talking about my tools that Alan gave me? Is that what you want to see?
Oh, you wanted to see them? Here, I'm going to take this. Watch out, Mel. So we've got... Do you want to show them, babe?
Sure. See if I can remember what they all are.
So...
I actually was looking for my mask at first because I'm so used to wearing one at work. I was like, oh, I was going to put my mask on.
So what are those?
Hang on. My brain. Clamps.
I
wanted to say cramps, so and I was like, wrong word.
In Europe, they're called cramps.
Well, see, there you go. I was channeling my European. And then I have hard wax, because James doesn't ever let me use his wax. And I have stickers. Scale is not included. And depth gauge.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yes. With Alan's mark. Melody's already trying to steal my pencils. And then marking gauge.
Really cool marking gauge. I like that one.
Depth gauge. I know, James is going to try to steal some of these. Not allowed. So thank you, Alan.
So hopefully soon you'll see projects.
I think he's trying to just make up for the last couple years.
Yeah, for those of you who've been asking why Sarah hasn't built anything on her bench, because I've been taking it up. So we're hoping, I still have to get all the finish on the chairs, and the chairs have just been taking up a crazy amount of space in the shop. So hopefully in the next week or two, which is I've been saying for the last month, they'll all be done.
So I have ideas for my next project, but y'all can throw ideas out there for me, that you think it would be fun for a beginner to make.
Cool. So have they been talking about which weaves they want to see?
So I've seen a couple Trinity knots and a Celtic braid.
Okay. Well, I could do like two side by side, do like the Celtic Trinity and then the logo. Because the interesting thing about doing like the logo, it would then show some lettering and some chip carving and then a circle. That's kind of a fun one. Hey, maybe we'll do that. If you guys like Trinity and logo, let me know that. But let's actually talk through some of the tools. One of the first questions that people ask when they start looking at carving is, what carving set should I get? And I'm generally going to say, don't get a carving set. Melody, can you show this? I want to see this much in it. So usually when you get a carving set, there's like 6 to 12, and you get one V-tool, one straight, one skew, and then the rest are all different types of gouges. The problem with getting a set is there are thousands and thousands and thousands of gouges out there, and you will never have the one you need. And when you get a set, you're going to have 6 gouges or more that aren't the one you want. They're kind of close enough that you can make them work, but they're not the gouge you want for that project. So what we've got in here is number one. Is it focused on here, Mel? We have our V tool, and this is a V, so just 2 sides that come down, and it's a tiny little gouge at the bottom. It doesn't come to a point. V gouges don't come to a point. There's a slight gouge at the bottom. This is probably the best carving tool you can ever get. I've got 4 or 5 of them. This one is a file 12-6. This one's actually a 6 millimeter and a 60-degree V gouge. Actually, I think it's a little steeper than 60 degrees. This one I think is 60 degrees and it's a little larger. And this one's a little bit taller, so it's slightly bigger. So it's nice to have a small one and a big one. But once you have one V tool, you really only need the one. You can get a lot done with it. The next thing, it would be a skew. And I like this little one. This one's from Two Cherries. A skew just allows you to do a lot of the little points and things like that. Then you start getting into all the gouges. You don't need a straight chisel. A straight chisel is a bench chisel. This one's basically a firmer chisel because it's got the square sides. But you don't need that because you've got bench chisels. When it comes to gouges, though, there's 2 different parameters. Number one, there's the radius. In other words, how curved is it? Is it a tight curve or is it a lax curve? And then how wide is it? And between those two, you can get pretty much an infinite number of gouges. So what I'm going to tell people is go buy a V-tool, go buy a skew. Once you get these 2, then figure out what gouges you need for your project and find the gouge that fits the project and buy it one off. Because if you buy a whole set, yes, per chisel you may actually save some money, but you're going to use your V-tool, you're going to use your skew, and then you're going to have all of these other gouges that you probably don't use. So per chisel you use, you're spending more on buying a set. So don't buy full sets. Buy the individuals that you want for the project you're going to do. Now, one of the problems with getting chisels is you get all those chisels and then you got another project, you're like, oh, I need those ones, and then I need to start getting into some veiners, and then I want those ones, and then I want that other chisel, and this is only one of 4 chisel rolls that I own. Because eventually you start getting to the point where you have to start going to Tools Anonymous meetings. And hi, my name is James Wright, and I'm a toolaholic. Yeah.
I was like, let's be honest here.
Yeah, so tonight you'll see why the V-tool is one of my favorites. Once you start getting into relief carving or 3-dimensional carving, you're going to be using a lot of gouges, and you're not going to use the V-tool as much. But for most surface carving, texture carving, the V-tool is what you're going to be using more than anything else. As to brands, my favorite is File. It's really cool. Most Germans will tell you it's pronounced File. However, I've talked to several people at the company and said that it was Peffel. And then I talked to a couple other people that pronounced it another way, And so pronunciation, I'm sorry. Two Cherries is another one that I really like. It's a little bit lesser quality, I'd put it as, but really good bang for the buck. Two Cherries is one I like, and that's what most of mine are. Another one, I have another set over there of Schaff. How do they pronounce it? Schaff? Schaff? I think it's Schaff, which is the Dutch word for hand plane. And those are unbelievably, incredibly cost effective. You're going to spend a little bit of time sharpening them off ahead of time. They're not going to be quite as good of a steel, but they're really, really good. And I was very impressed with that. I did a video on those recently. And I've got some from Narix that I really like. And so there are now a lot of other ones that are actually surprisingly decent. It used to be basically Two Cherries or File, and then there were a bunch of other trash. Do not get the carving chisels from Harbor Freight. They are not carving chisels. They are trash. They are not carving chisels. I don't care what the thing on the box says. They won't treat you well. So don't get those.
I have a question.
Got that? What's that?
So Woodworking with Logan wants to know, how are the Stanley Sweetheart socket chisels? He's thinking of getting them, and are they truly a socket chisel?
Yes, they are a socket chisel. They're hammered in there, and sometimes they're, I don't remember if they glue them in at the factory. I don't think they do, but they're actually pretty stiff in there, so they may take some work to get out if you want to switch them, but they are socket chisels. I'm not a huge fan of them. I don't find them comfortable, and that's the most important thing with chisels, is how comfortable are they to you. Definitely go take a look at my chisel test, which I'm actually in the middle. I've got another dozen or so chisels that are coming up in the test. We're going to be adding those on here soon. But I actually did a comparison steel to steel. I'm not a fan of socket chisels. I really don't like them. I found them to be very annoying and just a pain. But that's just my personal experience. In my book, the best bang for the buck are the Narix Richters. They are a phenomenal chisel. And in the tests I've done, they have stood up far better than anything else. But I've got a lot of other chisels coming in the test, so who knows what comes in the future with that. So, is there any more words on what we need to do with the pattern?
Someone said curve weave, and then more 3D, trefoil, however you say it, and logo. They want your logo.
Okay, then let's do. Let me see how these pattern out.
a little of everything.
So I'm going to pull out. Here, show this down here, Melody. So actually point like right here. I'm actually going to pull out a couple different patterns here, and let's see how they lay out. Usually when I am carving, I am going to be then just cutting things out of paper, and I printed these out. Most of my patterns come from Google Images, and then I use MS Paint to size them and print them just the way they want them to be. So let's play with these, because this one here, I can actually make this into something a little bit more three-dimensional and make it kind of puffy rather than just being a line carving. So let's see how much space.
That one looks more threatening to me.
Show me what we got over here. Space it over here.
An oak tree.
What's that?
You should carve an oak tree.
Yes.
So
Oak and shield. Sorry,
Yes.
I love Hobbit.
I just find them on Google Images, print them out, and then size them to what I want. Let's actually do 3 of them on here. 2 different Celtics and the logo. I'm not caring anything particular about this, how this goes, but something like that. Yeah, I kind of like that. So here, let me lift it up a little bit higher, Mel, because I want to see it more down on like that. Make sure. There we go. So let's do something like this. Now to apply these down, every time I do this, I get all sorts of crazy, weird comments about why you should never do that. There's better ways of doing it. And this is actually the way I really like to do it. I'm just going to take a regular glue stick. This happens to be Gorilla Glue, but in the past I used the kids' glue. And I usually have a stick of kids' glue on here, but I have these Gorilla Glue sticks. I don't even know where I got these from. But they're basically kids' glue. And I'm going to put them on here and then apply it down. And I think the thing I like about this is this pattern does not move. No matter what you do to it, it is going to work very, very well. Other ways you can do it is you can take this with the inkjet, not inkjet, the the regular printers. Flip it over on there, and you can use an iron to transfer it on there. A lot of people like doing that. Some people like using spray adhesive. Some people like doing putting down painter's tape on the back of this, and then putting painter's tape on the wood, and then super gluing this to the painter's tape so they can just peel off the painter's tape. I haven't had good luck with that. I've found it to slip off a bit. So, and then we'll put this one on there. So this one we're just going to do a very, very simple line drawing. This is one of my favorites because it's incredibly easy. Anyone can do this with about 5 or 6 minutes of learning. And yeah, Melody's even done it in some of her videos. And then this one we'll do something a little bit deeper with some of the letter carving. And then this one we'll do some of the pillow carving. So don't think I'm going to get through all of them tonight, because total that's probably going to be about an hour and a half worth of me carving. So I'm going to start here with my V tool. And over here. Melody, why don't you focus over on this one here. And the V tool is what I generally prefer to do most of my outline and laying out things. I have 3 mallets that I normally use for my carving, though I've got a bunch more. This is one from DFM Toolworks. It is a beast, and I use this when I really need to move things. Now, whenever you're carving, you're holding the head. You're not holding the handle like a hammer. You're actually holding the head and moving it. And so having some weight there means you move it just a little bit to make it move. This one is a Shop Fox. You can get these on Amazon. It's like, what, 8 ounces? No, it's not that much. It's like 6 ounces. And this one I like when I just want to tap a little bit. But my favorite, the one I use more than anything else, is this one out of Live Oak. I have a video turning this on the spring pole lathe. This one I love. It just feels good in the hand. Just have a chunk of wood. It's the right balance. It's got a large face to it. It works very, very well for what I need. So we're going to start over here on this one now. Yep. We're going to start over here on this one. And for what I'm going to do is when you start it, you lift the chisel up high, give it a couple light taps until it's down to the depth you want. And then your depth of cut, how deep the groove is determined by your angle of the chisel. The higher the angle of the chisel, the deeper it's going to cut in. The lower the angle, the more it's going to skim across and just give you a light cut. So I'm just going to go across like that, and I got my first groove in here. Now, that may seem like I'm skipping a bunch of steps, but I'm just going to start in high, cut down, and go until I stop. It may seem like I'm skipping a bunch of steps and making it easier than it is, but in all honesty, that's about all it is. The other thing I can do with this is, rather than using a mallet, I can freehand it. The problem with freehanding it is, if you put too much pressure in it, you're going to slide past your mark. So on this one, the glue isn't fully set on the paper, so it's sliding out a bit. Not a problem though. With freehanding, you have to be very careful you don't put too much pressure in. Because with freehanding, you're putting all your pressure into it, and if it catches on something and then suddenly it lets go, you slide. With a mallet, you're only giving it enough movement to go from here to here, and then the next tap goes from here to here. So you're never going to blow past your line. So a mallet actually gives you a little bit more control. And it really doesn't matter as much when you're just doing a simple V-cut, whether you're going with the grain or against the grain. Yeah, see there, I'm sliding past. I don't want to do that.
So Logan asks, how sharp do they need to be?
Pretty sharp. And actually, I think I need to go sharpen this one up. So let me show you what I do with that. I didn't glue this side down all the way. It's slipping out a little bit. The sharper it is, the cleaner the cut you're going to need and the less force you're going to need. So this one's actually a little on the dull side. Now with carving chisels, I keep them very, very, very sharp. I do not let them get as dull as I let my planes get. Where did my other one go?
What are you looking for?
My strop is missing.
It was.
Oh well, I'll pull this one. I've got 7 or so strops in here. So I have chrome oxide on here. Melody, stop that. And I'm just going to put, Melody, show the strap here. I'm going to put the chisel on here, and just like a bench chisel, I'm going to go on the bevel, a couple up top, and so I'm just going to go at a pace like this. And then I'm going to do the other side. So I'm basically doing 2 chisels. And then For the bottom, it's not coming to meet at a point. There's actually a small gouge on there. So I'm going to come across this way, come across this way, and I'm rounding that over just like I would a gouge. And so I've done the outside. To do the inside, I'm just going to grab the side of this. And normally I have these loose rather than being on a plate, so that I can come to the other side easier. And there, that's nice and sharp. With, is that down there? Nope, that's the other one. With a carving tool, I'm going to do that usually every 10 minutes or so, depending on the wood. This is hard maple. Hard maple is actually pretty easy on the chisels, so I can probably get away with a little bit more on this. If I'm doing something like oak, I'm going to be stopping every 5 minutes or so.
So, Kevin McCann asks, do you leave a little bit of a burr on, or is it more like a bench chisel?
It's basically exactly like a bench chisel. Because I'm just stropping it, there really isn't that much of a burr. If you strop quite a bit, you'll feel a burr. But if you're stropping that much, I'm usually saying you're stropping a bit too much. So I don't normally get to the point where I'm going to feel a burr. I'm just taking off enough that it's just polishing that tip up a bit. And if I take care of my chisels, I'm never taking them back to the sharpening plates. I only take these back to the sharpening plates if I drop them on concrete or I damage the chisel. I never let them get dull enough that I have to take them back to that. And so for this, here, switch back to this. I'm just working my way around here. And I'm going to use, because this is just black, I'm going to put the black on the inside of the line. So one of the two faces of the V tool are running along that. And this, running into that, this procedure can go really, really quickly. Adds a lot to it and shows up pretty nicely. The whole thing about this is I'm going to be constantly working. So rather than moving my body, moving my arms around when I'm carving, I'm going to move my whole body around. So I'm going to start back here, and as I turn, I'm shifting across this way. So that's why usually you can't carve sitting down, because you want to move your whole body. And there's a little bit of a skill to moving smoothly, but it goes pretty straightforward. Let's see. Do I want to finish? Yeah, let's go ahead and finish this one up.
Okay, wait. Which camera do you want to be on?
The big one, so I'm showing you the
Okay.
movement. Actually, switch back over to this one now. Any questions right now?
Um,
I'm going to finish up this one because it's really
Yeah.
quick and easy. What you got?
so if you don't have a strop, you're saying that you need to get a strop.
Yes,
to
yes.
keep
For
this.
carving tools, you have to have a strop. You could do it with a really high grit waterstone, but that's just a pain. And a strop just gives you that edge that few things can that quickly. Just to have it sitting on your bench as a loose piece of leather, it works phenomenally well. And if you want to see them, I sell them on my website. I use horsebutt. It's just a really nice hard leather that works very, very well. Almost there. Oop, went a bit high. Trying to work around this post back here. Guess I could take it out. So it's causing me to lift it up, which is giving me a really deep groove right there. Not what I want, but it's what I get. And the other nice thing about a V-tool, especially when you're just doing lines like this, you're not worrying too much about grain direction. And grain direction is something that's really going to cause you problems when you start needing to get into three-dimensional and into relief carving, because you always need to be making sure you're pounding the right direction. Also, make sure you're never pounding toward yourself. Ooh, here's another spot where I'm going to run into that. So as I'm moving around, my whole body is moving to follow it. And I'm not getting bent out of shape about not being right on the line. Here you can see I'm just doing these lines with a single cut. A lot of times I'm going to do one cut that's shallow, another cut that gets me really close to my depth, and then I'll come in with a third or fourth cut that just do final cleanups to get everything shaped well.
So,
But in something like this, I'll just do one little cut.
so Alan super chatted,
Oh, what do you say?
and he wants to know, do you prefer to cut the under or lower lines first?
The under or lower lines first? The under or lower lines, is that what you
It
said?
says under parentheses lower lines first.
I do not know what you mean by that, Alan. Can you please clarify? I cut whichever one I am set up to do, so I don't have to move around to get at the right angle for it. In this particular pattern. When I do some Celtic weaves, there's a lot of lines going in the same direction. And so I'll keep that same direction and I'll tap that one direction on every one of them. And I'll move to another place and I'll do all of them at that direction. And I'll do all of those lines. And I'll move to another one and I'll do all of those lines at that direction and work my way around. So here we've got this one done. Let's peel off what I can. At least I think I got it all. I always want to make sure I go back and hit them all. Yeah, around there. Really nice, quick little, simple carving on there. Now with the logo, I wanted to show this one because this is a nice, clean, round circle. And nice, clean, round circles are an absolute pain.
The line that goes...
Oh, I see what you're saying, for the Celtic weave. So if you have a line that goes underneath another one. Honestly, I don't find it makes that big a difference. I often like to do the line that dead ends into the other one first. That way when I do the second one that comes by, it cleans off all the ends and trims them up a little bit. I kind of like that one. But it is very nice to have that line to dead end into so that when your chip comes out, it splinters out. You just want to make sure you're not pushing freehand then. Otherwise, you're going to blow out that end and right into your next line you had, that void you created, if that makes sense. So 6 of one, half a dozen of another. There's both reasons for different ones.
Are you ready for Alan's mom joke?
What do we got?
Why should you always fear a pirate duck?
A pirate duck?
A pirate duck.
What?
Because it has the power to unleash the Kraken.
Okay. Back to this. So with this, the tendency is you want to go straight, and you'll go like straight, and then you'll stop, and you'll go like this, and then you'll stop, and you'll go like this, and you get all these facets. So the object is you want to be able to turn on every single impact, and you want to slowly work your way around. And no matter how good you get at it, you're never going to make a perfect circle. And the human eye is so good at picking out circles that aren't quite right. And so usually when doing a circle, I'll do one at that depth, and then I'll bring another one in, and I'll freehand it, and I can see the pattern, and I'll know where I can go a little bit deeper. Melody, you're making noises. And I can work my way around that way. Now, sometimes with circles, I will freehand the whole thing, but it's scary freehanding rather than using the mallet. And I've gotten my body very used to just moving along with it. And then I'll come over here because I'm at this angle. Here, let me show you this. Because I'm over here at this angle finishing this one up, if I need to go any farther, now I'm running into the bench. But hey, if I rotate around a little bit more, I can come back over to the first line I was at, and I can go the other direction. And now I can work my way around the bench this way. Always keeping an eye on your mark so that you can stop at any point and make sure you're where you want to be. Making sure your curl doesn't get in the way of what you're looking at. Circles are just a pain because they always show up the imperfections. No matter how good you are, a circle is never quite as good as you think it is, because there is no such thing as a perfect circle. And so now we're coming back around here. off the line a little. Almost there. There, we got our circle. That one's actually not that bad. I would probably normally come in and clean up a few places, and I'll push to one side or the other. And I'll try and make this side of the groove bigger this way, or this side of the groove and push it that way. And I can fix the line by working it back and forth and doing one side or the other. But let's do letters. Letters are where these skews come out, and you can get into chip carving. And the idea with chip carving is we want to make a V cut in there. And I could come in with this, and I could cut out the V letters, and sometimes I will, especially for something like this because it's so small. I could just cut in like that and try and make the V gouge deep enough so it touches both sides of the walls. However, on these ones, the lettering is actually wider than the blade, so I'm going to come in like that.
Question.
What's that?
You changed pictures. Wood grain direction still doesn't matter at this point.
Not that I'm using a V tool. I'll show that in a moment.
Okay.
Where anytime you're doing a V tool and you're just making a line where both sides are angled in, grain direction doesn't matter that much. There are some cases, like if you're going around the outside of a surface, where you might run into the problem, but most of the time when you're on a flat block, as long as the grain isn't wild, it doesn't make as big a difference. Especially if it's sharp. If this gets dull, then it makes a big difference. But here, so we've done this at a decent depth. And I'm going to come over and I'm going to make it just a little bit wider to one side. And I'm just going to push right up against the line on the pattern. And then I'm going to come over and make it wider on the other side. Starting it high, then letting it rock down in. So basically one side of the V is right on my pattern on this side, and the other side is right on the line that I just cut on the other side. It's just sliding across the other side. Cutting a little bit deeper here than normal, so it's a little bit louder. There. I've made that, and it's a really nice crisp cut. And for something that's only that size, it's really not a problem. But if my letters are any bigger than this, then it starts to be an issue. Let me bring this around over here. Whoop. Focus, there we go. So here's where a V tool really comes in. And a V tool, I can use it a couple different ways. I like to push the heel in, the lower side. And so I'll put it right in that corner, and I'll angle it, pointing in at an angle. So I'm cutting one half of the V, and I'll just push it in a little ways. And I'll do the other half of the V, and push it in. And I got this little chip that comes out. Once I get the chip out, now I can come in with the tip, and I can clean it out a little bit, and clean it out a little bit. And I can do those rounded areas, just like that. Do the same thing on this side, except for I have to push towards myself because there's a camera in the way. Heel in, and then I can come in with the tip and clean it out, just like that. So in these cases here, where it's crossing, I'm just going to do one side, and I'm just pushing in all the way along here. Or I'm going to grab my bench chisel, straight, that was sharp enough. And with this, because it's a larger size, I can come in here, set it right along that line, and just wiggle it in a little bit. Turn around from the other side. Try and get my fingers out of the way. Set it in from this side, and wiggle it in. I get that little chip that pops out. That's why it's called chip carving. And now that it's out, I can see any imperfections in there. I can come back in and clean that up a little bit. It's really hard to do with a camera right there.
It's a fine picture of your knuckle.
So then we can come into this side. Actually, do this one over here. So on this one's a little deeper. So I'm just going to wiggle it side to side. For this one, wiggle it side to side. And I'm just estimating where the bottom is. If anything, I'm going to make it more shallow than it needs to be right here. And then go back in until we get that little chip to pop out.
Disclaimer at the bottom, never
Just like
chisel
that.
toward yourself.
Yeah. And we can just wiggle out those chips in there. Get really nice, clean, sharp bottom on there. And then we can bring in this one again, put the heel in, point it in, come in from the other angle, put it in, do the other side, heel in, and then heel in, then come in at the tip and use it just to detail all those little chips out. It's really hard to do when there's a camera in your way.
Well, I've got some questions
Yeah,
for
what we
you
got?
while you do that. So Carol's Cakes wants to know, Sarah, are you going to do give carving a go tonight?
If you want to.
Okay. I was going to say, it depends if James gives up.
You've done the V-tool work before. You want to try the chip carving?
Sure.
Here, come on over then. Watch out, Melody.
Dangerous.
Whoop, foot's there.
This has not been rehearsed. Hey, at least it's none of my jammies.
Here.
Hang on, I got it. Oh, I should have brought my stool with me, shouldn't I?
Not for this.
No, you think so? Oh.
No, I'd actually rather have the bench higher for me, so it should be about the right height for you. Let me make this up. What'd you do to this, Mel?
I don't know.
Focus, there we go. So, here I'll show you closer up. We're going to grab this end,
Yes.
and I'm going to go
It's a good thing I was paying attention.
chip from this side. Just wiggle it back and forth, put some pressure in it, turn around the other side,
Oh, that's dangerous for me.
and wiggle it in from this side. You get that chip that comes out, and you can see those little fuzzies in there.
You know they're counting how long till you actually let me touch
There
the
we go.
chisel.
Here, go for it. Now you're going to want to put your palm on the back of the handle.
Okay, I was just still trying to line it up.
Okay.
I want to go like this, right?
Mhm.
You say I don't want this tool. Like
That's
that?
too high. I'm going to bring it
That's
down a
too
bit. Yep, right about there.
Like this?
Yep, and push with all your might and wiggle it back and forth. Both of your mights.
Like that?
Yep.
Okay.
Then come from the other side. Here, I'll move the camera out of the way so you can actually do it the correct way. You don't want to gut yourself.
I would rather not go back to work at this moment in time.
Here, I'm not wanting to be gutted either.
If there's anything 15 years of marriage is taught. No. The faces
There you go.
right there. Like this?
Yep. Wiggle it back and forth. There you go. There's your chip that pops out. So you just look in there, and it's actually really nice and clean. Here, I'll zoom in so people can see your glory.
James or Sarah, can you tell the difference?
Hit 3.
Hit 3. Bing.
So there. Here's what she just did.
Am I a chip off the old block?
What'd you call me? And so when it actually comes to letter carving, the idea is you want to make it rough. And you want to get the chip in there. And then once the chip is out of the way, then you can detail it. So always err on the side of not going too steep. You want to start shallow and chip it out that way, both sides. And then if you want to, then you can make it a little deeper and clean it out. And then with letter carving, you're going to get to a point where you're just doing the same spot over and over again, and it gets steeper and steeper and steeper until you just got to get to a point where you're like, it's good enough. Because there is no such thing as perfection when it comes to this. You can spend a very, very long time detailing and spending a lot of work on that. What time are we at? 40? Okay, let's move on to the next one. We haven't gotten to gouges yet, so we'll do a little bit with that. Now with, here, let me show you this pattern. Melody? No, you're fine now. So on this pattern, the idea what we want is to make this all pillowed out so that the lettering itself is actually the three-dimensional up. So the way we start that is we start with a V-tool, and I'm just going to do one petal on here. And we're going to do exactly what we did back here, except for in this one, we're just using this to create an outline. And following it around to there. Same thing on this side. Moving the body and following it around. So I'm just going to do this point right now. And let's come in from here. When we get to these tiny little curls, I tap it very, very, very lightly. So I'm not moving much at all. When you get to tight end curls, you want to be using very, very little force. Just tiny little, that's all the movement I'm doing on it. So, is that a super chat I missed?
It is. Jeanine Hoffman says, I am disabled and sit a lot to work. Other than a sturdy seat, pulling the workload and moving the work more, any ideas to make it accessible?
Yes. If you're going to be sitting down, what you need is something that will rotate and move in front of you, because I'm actually moving my whole body around the work. And a lot of times carving tables are about 2 foot by 2 foot, and there's nothing around them so that you can walk all the way around it doing your carving. If you're doing it sitting, then your work has to move. And so the most common method is to have a plank that you can attach things to. It's about 1 foot by 1 foot, and then putting that on a swivel that moves around. The problem is you have to be able to clamp that down in place so when you're tapping on it, you're not moving the whole swivel. One of the best ways I've seen is actually to get a vise that has an articulated head and just clamp the work in your vise. That way you can move the vise and then carve some more and move the vise again and carve some more. Works out relatively well, though it is more difficult if you're the one sitting and you have to move the work around you. What's that? Did your mic die?
No, we just changed it. I've got a green light. I
Oh.
don't know what you're doing now.
Are you doing now? Let me move on to this. So what I've got here is I've got a very fine gouge. This is a 2 cherries 7/6. And I'm trying to remember which one it is. One of them talks about the radius, one of them talks about the width. You remember correctly, it's 6 millimeters across from tip to tip, and it's a number 7 sweep. Which I can't remember what the 2 cherries on it. I remember what that is. But honestly, if you're buying a particular chisel, you're going to go to their website and actually look at their measurements and be like, oh, I need this particular radius and I want it to be this wide. And then you'll order that chisel. That's the way you generally order gouges. But this one should be pretty close to what I want. Now what I want to do is on this right here, where am I at? Back over here, let me turn this a little bit. So on this, I want to lower everything around it. And one of the easiest way to do that is grab this chisel and I'm going to just cut everything in down to depth around it. And I'm going to make everything else lower so that the thing that is high is what I want to keep. And here I'm going to start running into grain issues. Actually, I won't on this side because I'm cutting with the grain here. And you'll notice that occasionally you'll get tear out on the side of the chip, which I'll probably get on this side here. Actually, no, as I'm coming around this way, I'm going in the right direction again too. Let's see if I'm going, see if I were carving this way. No, let's do this. You'll notice you'll get tear out on the side, which is, as long as you're progressing along, you'll get tear out on the side you're about to cut because you're always about to cut the next leaf off. And so if you start seeing that tear out, that means, oh, I got to start and move over here and go in the opposite direction. But with this hard maple, it's actually really forgiving. It's a nice wood to carve. So now we've gotten rid of all that chunk. I'm going to come in here with my V-tool, and I'm going to sharpen up, not my V-tool, my skew, and I'm going to sharpen up that line from the V-tool. I'm basically taking this edge of the V-tool line a little deeper, creating more of a stop in there. And that will clean this all up. Oop, wrong side. A good bit more. Then, on these interior parts, here I got to do this still. me do this line so I can get a nice clean on there. Oop, camera. On this one, I'm going to come in with the V-tool here. Actually, I need a slightly smaller gouge for this one. Let's see, I've got this one. Hey, look at that. Really, really tiny. This one's, if you remember correctly, 3 millimeters across. So it's half the size, but it's the same radius. So I'm going to remove that waste out of the middle, trying to go with the grain. And clean it up a little bit with that. So now we still have this flat here on the top. The way we can fix that is I can make the chisel upside down, bevel down, and on these outside corners, I can come in and clean it up. But here, I'm going to be running against the grain, so I need to turn around this way and go with the grain. I should do a live video on carving the donut sometime. If you're ever wondering which direction to carve, carving a donut teaches you grain direction. Ow! Sliced my finger. Such is life. Blood, sweat, and tears. Every project needs them. And I'm basically rounding the top surface of this shape. Well, you can't go upstairs and get me a Band-Aid. Spraying blood all over the place. Except we need to go this way now.
You notice what the nurse isn't worried.
I'm more worried about the maple. It soaks up blood like you wouldn't believe. That white surface. So yeah, here you can see I'm carving towards myself. Don't do as I do. Do as I say.
Shoot you have Janine's joke while we...
Yeah.
All right.
Will I bleed all over the place?
Yeah. What do you call a policeman's uniform?
Blue?
What color? What do you call it?
What?
A lawsuit.
Wouldn't there be a lawyer's uniform?
I don't know. I just read the joke. They enforce the law.
Yes, a lawsuit. I like that. So once you start getting into rounded shapes, now you're going to be working at this forever. Because this is one of those things that can just drive you bonkers. And this is where you start getting into specialty gouges. Because in this one, I want to come in here and I'll flip it around. And I want a gouge that matches that angle. It needs to be a little steeper than that one. So let's grab this one. Yeah, that's about right. I'm going to turn it upside down here. And use that. Just a second, Mel. Thank you. Oop, I ran to that side. This is one of these where you really gotta be careful. It would be a lot easier if I did the whole thing at once. Normally I would outline all of these and then I'd come in and chip in from all the other sides. Put a Band-Aid on. Thank you, Melody. So I'm still bleeding all over the place. Every project requires blood. Blood sacrifice.
Don't you usually put boxing?
I do, but I ran out. And you're going to find that all of these gouges, like I now have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 gouges out here. You'll eventually need even more, and so that's why you start collecting. And every time you get another profile, it's like, ooh, I got another one. Let's try that here. Timing-wise, 10 minutes. Yeah, I'll finish this up later. So if you're pillowing it out, the idea is to outline around it, lower everything outside. And on this one, I just did one pass of lowering out here. Usually, I'm going to do 2 or 3. And so on the next one, I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to come back a little farther and cut it in a little deeper. Because the deeper you make it, the more it's going to show out. And with this one being a little bit deeper, now I can come back in with that skew, and I can sharpen up that bottom line again. I'm using the heel of the skew to slide along here. Oop. And clean up any of those chips from this. And clean those out this way. Giving a really nice, clean, sharp bottom there. And the deeper I make this sidewall, the more this is going to exemplify. And also the deeper I make it, the more chance I have to come in here and round over the top of this, make it slightly more pillowed. And a lot of it is just these tiny little curls coming through and trying to shape that out. Now I could also come in with carving knives. And these, anytime you're starting to get into round and sculpting shape, carving knives are often what I'm going to be grabbing, because on this, and unfortunately this one's missing a tip, I want to cut with the grain. I want to come this way. And the nice thing about this is I can very easily come in and cut along there. And that one's got that skew. Ooh, let me grab, where did I put that one? The new one I just made. Stink, where did I put it? Thought I put it in here. Apparently not. Oh well. That was a carving knife I had. The nice thing about a carving knife is you can very easily come around this side, and when the grain switches, you just turn the knife around and you push it the other way, because it's very easy to then manipulate it and go around things. Especially when you have a three-dimensional sculpture, it's whittling, and it makes it so much easier to work with a knife. Unfortunately, this one needs a lot of work. Oh my, a lot of work. Did you play with this, Melody? Yeah, I can blame my daughter. Okay, oh, the last thing I want to say before this. When you got all this paper on here then, the easiest way to take it off is grab a card scraper, and you can scrape the surface off. Oop, let me turn this up. There we go. No, Melody, back up. And you can scrape it off. And the nice thing about that is the next thing you're going to want to do before finishing is your scraping and finish planing. And this gives you your first step of finishing. I don't want to go any farther because I'm going to carve that later. But you can see in this, some places where I came in here a little too deep. Some places where I didn't go deep enough. And at this point I can come back in and say, you know, I want to take this a little bit more. I don't need the pattern there because I've already got this on. And so I can come in this way. And I can take this one a little bit deeper because it's not quite deep enough. And do my little detailing now. Because I don't need the pattern now that I can see it all. You can spend a little bit of time on that. But once you get into this, you're going to find that this is never good enough. No matter what you do, your carving is never good enough, because freehand carving is chasing perfection, and it is a direction you will never achieve. So at some point you just have to say, no, it's good enough, and walk away. And usually about 50% of where you would say good enough, most people won't notice the difference between that 50% mark and where you finally actually stopped, because most people aren't doing this to it, and you are. So don't worry about it. It looks really good. What questions we got?
Let's see. Going back to the circle logo, does it help to cut lines before carving the circle?
Generally, no. Most of the time when you're carving, the V tool is actually the line you're carving. And so when you're marking things, usually one of the easiest way to do it is to mark it with the V tool. And so just like we made that V tool circle around, often that is the mark. And so rather than marking it with a knife and starting to cut in, the V tool is what you do to make that outline. And so normally then I would come in with the gouges and gouge down to lower the profile around or lower the line that I'm carving. But the mark being made that everything comes into, that first cut, is the V tool. So, yeah. What's next?
Oh, it didn't turn off now.
Oh, the battery die on it?
Yeah, it just changed.
Oh, what's the next question? I'll work on it.
Okay, Brett Johnson asked, what's your, well, I think you talked about this earlier, process to touch up the tips. Do you strop a few times before going to use stones? We don't use stones.
Yeah, I don't use stones. Is it on now?
No, it's
No,
blinking.
this one is dying. So hopefully we'll have enough to continue, but my receiver there, and I don't have a battery for that one. So no, when I'm sharpening, on a scale of 1 to 1,000, the sharpest you can ever get steel is like a 70. You just can't get it any sharper than that. Usually anything under 100 is incredibly sharp. Anything under 150 is really, really good steel. Anything under 200 is generally sharp, is really good sharp. My carving chisels stay under 200. Usually I try and keep them under 150. If they get up close to the 200, I take them over to the strop, and it just takes 10 or so strokes in the strop to then bring it from that 200 down to like 150. A few more and I can bring it down to like 120. And once they're stropped, I never take these back unless I have a problem with them. If I drop them on the concrete or they hit something in steel and they get a chip on them, then I take them back to the stones and reprofile them. But I never let these get dull. I always keep a strop on the bench so I can work with them. And like the V-tool I've been using, it's time for me to go back and strop that. With my chisel, with my planes, I'll generally let those get to like a 300, 350, maybe a 400 in some of them. I let them get really dull, but at that point, the strop is not going to be able to bring them back. I have to take them back to the stone to take off a layer of steel and really work them down before I can take them to the strop, and then they're good and sharp again. But for carving chisels, I do not let them get anywhere near dull. What's next?
I think Franco, sorry, joined us a little later. How do you know which gouges you're going to need in order to do the job ahead if you've not used them before because you have not bought a set in the beginning?
You have to know the project you're going to make and what are the radiuses on your items. So if you're going to make a rose, what's the radius on the lobe of the rose you want? And you're going to go from there. Usually when you're looking at getting a wider gouge or a narrower gouge, if you're going to choose one or the other, choose a narrower gouge. It's going to take you more cuts to make that circle. However, if you need to make the circle a little smaller, you're not going to be able to do that with a larger gouge because it takes up more space. So if you're looking at wider or narrower, choose narrower. It is more versatile. It'll take you more steps, but it will be able to do more than the larger ones will. But as to the radius, you have to look at your pattern, what you're going to do, and find out what radiuses you're going to be using on your pattern and order those chisels. What's next?
I think that one died.
It died again?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry guys. I have to recharge that one.
I have one question. Well, I'll be done.
Okay, what you got?
I'll speak loudly. Karol wants to know, would boiled linseed oil at this point make detail easier to see?
Would boiled linseed oil make detail easier to see? Yes and no. Sometimes what I'll do, did I do that in these? No, I did it on something else. Boiled linseed oil never really makes things particularly darker, but shellac will. And so, Melody, don't play with that. Sometimes I'll put a coat of shellac on and then carve into it, and that gives you a very different coloring from one side to the other. If you put boiled linseed on the surface, you can carve into that, and you'll see the difference much better on that. But as soon as you put boiled linseed oil on to finish it, then it all becomes homogeneous. And the reason boiled linseed will make the carving pop out is because there's more open grain from the chisel on there, and there's more open grain per what you're viewing, and so there's more oil being represented in what you're seeing because you're seeing it from an angle. If that makes sense, I'm trying how to describe that. You would see more surface area because you're seeing it from an angle rather than seeing it flat on like you would with the surface of the wood. So with boiled linseed oil, yes or no. But some of the other things like shellac where you would build up a surface, yeah, you can get a very big difference by having more layers on that. What's next? That's what we got? Cool, well, we'll wrap this up. We're pretty much right on time. I've got something coming up next week, but I don't remember what it is.
Is that the Matt Carmona chat, or is it the Q&A?
Oh, it's right, next week's Q&A. So if you got questions, come next week, and we'll have fun with that. And I'm going to finish up this carving, and you will probably see some pictures of that coming up on Instagram. So, hey, Other than that, if you have any questions I didn't get to, send me an email and I'll answer those. And I think that'll do it for now. So until next time, have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye.